All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're going to connect something you probably drive through every single day with some of the biggest questions a person can ask. We're breaking down the theology of a traffic circle. And yeah, it all starts with a pretty weird question. I know, it sounds a little out there, right? But just stick with me, because by the end of this, I think you'll see how the simple engineering behind this piece of road design offers a surprisingly powerful way to think about some really complex ideas. But look, before we get to the big metaphor, we've got to understand the thing itself. To really get the theology, we need to appreciate the engineering first. So let's start with how the modern roundabout even came to be and why it works so well. It's funny, the very first traffic circles were a complete disaster. The one that opened in New York way back in 1905 had a massive flaw. The cars entering the circle had the right of way, which just created instant, permanent gridlock. It wasn't until 1966 that a British engineer named Frank Blackmore had this light bulb moment. He invented the game-changing rule, yield at entry. That one simple switch is what makes the whole thing work. So why does it work so much better? It's all about danger reduction. See, a conflict point is basically anywhere two cars can smash into each other. A normal four-way stop has a staggering 32 of them, 32 potential crashes. The roundabout's design, just by its shape, gets rid of the absolute worst ones, like those high-speed T-bones, and leaves only 8. It's just a simple, elegant change in geometry. And I mean, the numbers don't lie. The data from the Federal Highway Administration is just wild. Roundabout/fatal crashes by 90%. Injury crashes down 75%. These are not small tweaks. This is a design that fundamentally saves lives. It just does. So, the rules are pretty simple when you boil it down. You slow down, you pick your lane, you yield to the cars already in the flow, find your gap, and signal when you're leaving. It's a whole system built on cooperation, not just stopping and starting. Now, with those rules in your head, let's see how this piece of engineering can open up a much, much bigger conversation. Okay, here's the pivot. We're going to map these rules of the road onto 4 huge theological concepts. And we're starting with the biggest one of all, sovereignty. Just think about that central island. The grassy part in the middle. It is the unmovable, non-negotiable heart of the whole system. It dictates which way every single car has to go. You don't argue with it. You don't drive through it. You have to orient yourself around it. It is the fixed point that everything else revolves around. And this verse from Proverbs, it just captures that idea perfectly. We can have all the plans we want for how we're going to get through life's intersections, but ultimately, there's a central purpose, a core design that shapes the path we all have to take. All right, next up is a concept that gets really misunderstood, wrath. But in our traffic circle metaphor, it's not the crash. It's actually a safety feature designed to prevent the crash. You know that raised concrete median that physically forces you to slow down and curve as you enter a roundabout? That's called a splitter island. In our analogy, that's wrath. It is a strict, unyielding part of the design that is there to protect you from total self-destruction. It's a clear boundary that forces you off a path that ends in a high-speed, head-on collision with reality. Just like this verse from Romans says, it's a principle that's revealed. It's as obvious as a concrete curb in the road. It's a rule that's built right into the system to redirect us away from disaster. The key here is that it's protective. Okay, so from the protective curbs, let's talk about the moment of entry. How do you get into this divinely engineered system in the first place? Well, the answer is grace. Think about it. At a traffic light, green means go. It's your right, it's your turn. But at a roundabout, you face a yield sign. You have no right of way. You can only get in when a gap opens up for you in a system that was flowing long before you ever got there. You don't earn your entry. It's a gift, an opportunity that you have to humbly accept. This is one of the most famous verses on this topic, and it mirrors that yield sign perfectly. Getting into the flow, it's not your own doing. It's a gift, an unearned opening that lets you join it. So wait a minute. If the design is fixed and getting in is a gift, where does our choice come in? Well, that brings us to our final piece of the puzzle, free will. The engineer may have designed the road, but you are driving the car. Your hands are on the steering wheel. You are totally free to choose which exit you want to take. But, and this is a big but, you are not free from the consequences of the road's design. If you choose the wrong lane, you're going to end up somewhere you didn't mean to go. This scripture hits that idea right on the head. A path has been laid out before you, but the choice of which direction to take, that is profoundly, deeply, and personally yours. You have to actively choose. So, okay, we have this really elegant four-part theological metaphor. It seems like a perfect design, but what happens when imperfect drivers like you and me get behind the wheel? Well, that's when you get friction. Oh, we've all seen it. The person who panics and just stops dead in the middle of the circle. The driver who realizes they're in the wrong lane and cuts you off at the last second. My personal favorite is the overly polite driver who stops to let someone in, which completely breaks the principle of flow and almost causes a three-car pileup behind them. The design is perfect, but our behavior? Not so much. And we have to be honest, this design, while it's amazing for cars, creates new problems for other people. That constant flow of traffic makes it incredibly hard for someone who is visually impaired to hear a safe gap to cross. And drivers, so focused on accelerating out of the circle, they often forget to yield to people in the crosswalk. It's a good reminder that even a nearly perfect design has trade-offs. So, what do we do with all this friction, the panic, the confusion, the mistakes? How does that complete our metaphor? Well, this might actually be the most important part of the whole thing. And here's where it all snaps into focus. The problems with roundabouts are rarely about the engineering. The problems come from us. Our confusion, our fear, our selfishness, our simple mistakes. That's what causes the collisions. The friction we feel in that system, it perfectly mirrors the struggle of navigating a grand divine design with our own flawed human free will. And that leaves you with one last thing to chew on. Whether we're talking about a traffic system, a legal system, or moral system, how many other perfect designs out there are complicated simply by us being human? It's something to think about the next time you're yielding at a roundabout. Thanks for tuning in.